Hi, 8th graders. It's Mr. Castleman with another video. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 4, Sections 4, 5, and 6, and also doing the notes for Sections 4, 5, and 6. So if you haven't read and done the notes for Sections 1, 2, and 3, you should do that first. So you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need your Chromebook open to TCI Chapter 4, and then have it at Section 4. You're going to need your interactive student notebook. You can see mine's on the right here to Section 4, and then you're going to need something to write with. Okay, so let's read Section 4, and then we'll work on the notes for it. Section 4 is titled Rights of Colonists. Colonists in America saw themselves as English citizens. They expected the same rights that citizens enjoyed in England. The most important of these was the right to have a voice in their government. Magna Carta. The English people had won the right to participate in their government only after a long struggle. A key victory in the struggle came in 1215 when King John agreed to sign Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. This agreement established the idea that the power of the monarch, or ruler, was limited. Not even the king was above the law. The next major victory was the founding of Parliament in 1265. Parliament was made up of representatives from across England. Over time, it became a law-making body with the power to approve laws and taxes proposed by the king or queen. In 1685, James, the Duke of York, became King James II. The king did not want to share power with an elected assembly in New York, nor did he want to share power with an elected parliament in England. When he tried to rule without parliament, James was forced off his throne. This change in power, which took place without bloodshed, is known as the Glorious Revolution. The English Bill of Rights. In 1689, Parliament offered the crown to Prince William of Orange and his wife, Mary. In exchange, they had to agree to an act, or law, known as the English Bill of Rights. This act said that the power to make laws and impose taxes belonged to the people's elected representatives in Parliament and to no one else. It also included a bill or list of rights that belonged to the people. Among these were the right to petition the king, which means to request him to change something, and the right to trial by jury. English colonists saw the Glorious Revolution as a victory not only for Parliament, but for their colonial assemblies as well. They wanted to choose the people who made their laws and set their taxes. After all, this was a cherished right of all English citizens. Crime and punishment. Each colonial assembly passed its own laws defining crimes and punishments. However, most crimes were treated similarly in all the colonies. Certain very serious crimes could be punished by death. These included murder, treason, which is acts of disloyalty toward the government, and piracy, which is robbery at sea. Puritans in New England added other crimes to this list based on their understanding of God's law in the Bible. In New England, colonists could be put to death for denying the true God, or for striking or cursing their parents. Crimes such as theft, forgery, and highway robbery carried harsh punishments in every colony. For these crimes, people might be jailed, whipped, or branded with hot irons. Lesser crimes, such as drunkenness and breaking the Sabbath, which means working or traveling on Sunday, were punished with fines, short jail terms, or public humiliation. A colonist caught breaking the Sabbath, for example, might be locked in the town stocks. The stocks were a heavy wooden frame with holes for a person's neck, wrists, and ankles. Lawbreakers were locked for hours in this device in a public place where others could ridicule them. No group had firmer ideas about right and wrong than New England's Puritans. The Puritans required everyone to attend church on Sundays. They also forbade anyone to work or play on that day. The Puritans wrote their Sunday laws in books with blue paper bindings. For this reason, these rules came to be known as blue laws. Some blue laws persist to this day. In Connecticut, for example, it is still illegal for stores to sell alcohol on Sundays. The Puritans were constantly on the watch for signs of Satan, believed to be an evil angel who rebelled against God. Satan was thought to work through witches. In 1692, fear of witchcraft overtook residents of Salem, Massachusetts, when several girls were seen acting strangely in church. The girls accused their neighbors of being witches and putting spells on them. 19 accused witches were put to death during the Salem witch trials before calm was restored and the townspeople realized that the girls' accusations were untrue. Okay, so that's section 4. Now let's take a look at the notes for section 4. So the first question is so the first question we're not going to do. So we can just X that out. The second question, though, we are going to do. So how did colonists see themselves? Why was this important for their rights? So we learned about how colonists saw themselves as English citizens. So this matters a lot because they didn't see themselves as Americans yet. They saw themselves still as Englishmen and English women. So we can write colonists saw themselves as English citizens. Why was this important for their rights? Well, this was important because they expected to have the same rights as English citizens in England. Okay, so question number 3 asks, how are the rights of English citizens strengthened during each of these years? Include the words in parentheses in your answers. So it's talking about how are the rights of people in England strengthened during 1215, when the Magna Carta was signed, during 1265, when Parliament became a thing, and in 1689, when the English Bill of Rights was passed. Well, in 1215, Magna Carta was passed, and Magna Carta limits the power of the king. And says that he must follow the law. All right, now let's talk about 1265, when Parliament began. So a group of lawmakers called Parliament is created to approve laws. Now, 1689, the English Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights guarantees such rights as trial by jury, and choosing representatives to create taxes. Sorry, you should be able to see it now. So the English Bill of Rights guarantees such rights as trial by jury and choosing representatives to create taxes. And we're not going to do question 4, so you can just cross that out as well. Okay, now we're going to take a look at section 5. So first we're going to read section 5. So we're going to go over to the left side of our screen here, go to section 5. All right, section 5 is called Life for African Americans. Slavery in the colonies began in Virginia with tobacco planters. From there it spread both north and south. By the early 1700s, enslaved Africans were living in every colony. Even Benjamin Franklin owned slaves for a time. But like most people in the New England and Middle colonies, Franklin found that hiring workers when he needed them cost less than owning slaves. In the southern colonies, however, slavery expanded rapidly. From Virginia to Georgia, slaves helped raise tobacco, rice, indigo, and other cash crops. The Atlantic slave trade. Most of the slaves who were brought to the colonies came from West Africa. Year after year, slave ships filled with cloth, guns, and rum sailed from the colonies to the coast of West Africa. There, these goods were traded for Africans. The ships then returned to the Americas carrying their human cargo. For the Africans packed onto slave ships, the ocean crossing, known as the Middle Passage, was a nightmare. According to his autobiography, Aloda Equiano was just 10 years old when he was put onto a slave ship. He never forgot the, quote, closeness of the place, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself. Nor did he forget, quote, the shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying. The terrified boy refused to eat, hoping for the last friend, death, to relieve me. Although Equiano survived the voyage, many Africans died of sickness or despair. Even so, the Atlantic slave trade was very profitable. Many colonial merchants built fortunes trading in human beings. Work without hope. The slaves' masters in America demanded that the Africans work hard. Most enslaved Africans were put to work in the fields raising crops. Others worked as nurses, carpenters, blacksmiths, drivers, servants, gardeners, and midwives. Those are people who assist women giving birth. Unlike other colonists, slaves had little hope of making a better life. Their position was fixed. That means it was set. It wouldn't change at the bottom of colonial society. Some slaves rebelled by refusing to work or running away, but most adapted to their unhappy condition as best they could. Slowly and painfully, they began to create a new African American way of life. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the notes for section 5 here. So here's section 5. We're going to cross out the first question because we're not doing it. All right, so the first question we're doing is number 2. In which colonial regions was slavery found? And then in which region did it expand most rapidly and why? Well, slavery was found in all colonial regions. So it was found in the North, in New England, in Massachusetts, through the middle colonies, through New York, and of course into the South. So in which region did it expand most rapidly and why? It expanded most rapidly. That means it grew. It expanded most rapidly in the South. Because slaves were used to grow cash crops. The next question is, why did slaves have little hope of making a better life for themselves? Well, I mean, we read their position at the bottom of society at the time wouldn't change. It couldn't change. Slaves were slaves for life. All right, we're not going to do this last question. All right, so we can flip over the notes to section 6. That's the last section that we're going to read today. So we're going to go over here to section 6, religion. Religion was an important part of colonial life. Most colonists tried to lead good lives based on their faith. Children grew up reading the Bible from cover to cover, several times over. Puritan church services. In New England, the sound of a drum or horn called Puritans to worship on Sunday morning. Captains of the watch made sure everyone was a Sabbath keeper. Sometimes houses were searched to ensure that everyone was at church. Church services were held in the town meeting house. This was the most important building in the community and was used for all public meetings. Inside were rows of wooden benches called pews and a pulpit, that's a platform where the preacher stood. A seating committee carefully assigned seats, with the best ones going to older, wealthy people. Services could last as long as 5 hours. At midday, villagers would go to noon houses near the church to warm themselves by a fire, eat, and socialize. Then they returned to church for the long afternoon sermon. The Great Awakening. Beginning in the 1730s, a religious movement known as the Great Awakening swept through the colonies. This movement was spurred by a feeling that people had lost their religious faith. The forms of religion were kept up, a Puritan observed, but there was little of the power of God in it. To revive people's religious spirit, preachers traveled from town to town, holding outdoor revival meetings. There they delivered fiery sermons to huge crowds. Their words touched the hearts and souls of many colonists. Benjamin Franklin wrote about the change he observed in Philadelphia. It seemed as if all the world were growing religious, so that one could not walk through the town in an evening without hearing psalms, those are Bible songs, sung in different families of every street. The Great Awakening had a powerful effect on the colonies. It helped spread the idea that all people are equal in the eyes of God. Ordinary people could understand God's will if they had an open heart and a desire to know God's truth. By encouraging ideas of liberty, equality, and self-reliance, the Great Awakening helped pave the way for the American Revolution. Okay, let's take a look at the notes for section 6. So the first question we're not going to do, so we can just cross that out. And the second question asks, what 2 adjectives best describe Puritan church services? So let's find 2 words to describe Puritan church services. Well, we could start with long. They were very long. Sometimes the church services lasted 5 hours. Sometimes they lasted 5 hours. We might also say strict. That could be an adjective we use. And now, remember, you can write down any adjective you want, any word that describes what the church services were like for Puritans. So I said strict because sometimes the Puritans searched homes to see if anybody was skipping church. Sometimes the Puritans searched homes to look for people skipping church. Okay, so the next question says, how did the Great Awakening help pave the way for the American Revolution? Follow these 2 steps to reveal the answer. So, first we're going to number the sentences below from 1 to 5 to show the order in which they occurred. One of them is numbered for you. Then we're going to paraphrase the sentences, that means reword them, and write each in the correct space in the flowchart. All right, so here are the things that happen that we're going to put into order. Here's all 5. So the first is, these new ideas strengthen the principles of liberty, equality, and self-reliance. The second one is, there was a feeling that people had lost their religious faith. The third one, new ideas such as all people are equal in the eyes of God spread through the colonies. The next one, which is already numbered, 5th, so that's the last event. By the 1770s, colonists valued the ideas or the ideals of the Great Awakening, helping pave the way for the American Revolution. And then last, the Great Awakening began in the colonies in the 1730s. So which of these events was the first thing that happened? Take a second to make your guess. Now it has to be this one. There was a feeling that people had lost their religious faith. Now the second one is that the Great Awakening began in the colonies in the 1730s. The third one is that new ideas such as all people are equal in the eyes of God spread through the colonies. The fourth has to be that these new ideas strengthen the principles of liberty, equality, and self-reliance. Now I want you to write your own paraphrased causes and effects of the Great Awakening here. So try to come up with some paraphrased, which means you reword the idea. So maybe we can do the first one together. So the first one is, if we look over here, there was a feeling that people had lost their religious faith. Now, we might just put that in our own words by saying that people were less religious. This is one of the causes of the Great Awakening. Now you can see I took this idea right here and then I reworded it. So that's it for section 6. You're just going to go through and reword each of these here and put them on the right side here. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching, guys.